It was before sunrise when London's lamplit streets still whispered secrets in the fog. In the narrow alley by Greymont Street, the shadows clung to damp cobblestones like memories reluctant to let go. Street lamps cast pale halos onto puddles that held faint reflections of rooftops and distant church spires. In that hush, before the city stirred, a figure crouched beside a wheeled trolley. His name was Paul Turner, though most knew him simply as the beggar with the dogs. He cleaned the rims of empty food tins, humming an old lullaby he once sang to his daughter. By the time dawn fully broke, Paul had prepared bowls of warm water for each canine in his care. One by one, 15 or 20 shaggy heads lowered to lap at the liquid. The dogs' coats were matted but their eyes shone with unwavering trust. Paul knelt beside them, stroking fur that felt rough as sandpaper yet soft with gratitude. That morning's ritual was the same as every other, yet the world beyond that alley had changed dramatically. A single video, posted by a social media influencer named Sophie Marlowe, had ignited a flame of compassion across continents. People now arrived at Greymont not to judge but to offer blankets, dog food, even monetary support. Yet beneath the new attention lay echoes of a life Paul had struggled to forget, a life of hope, ambition, heartbreak, and redemption. The earliest memory Paul Turner had of animals was of his mother's golden retriever, Daisy, bounding through a breezy garden in Surrey. Paul was 5, clutching a blue plastic bucket of apples. Daisy gently nudged Paul's hand with her cold nose, coaxing an apple to drop at her paws. His mother laughed, brushing damp strands of hair from Paul's forehead. The day felt endless, fragrant with blossoms and possibility. Years later, when Daisy passed of old age, Paul wept beside her favorite pillow. His parents took him to the local animal shelter to choose a new friend, and there he met a timid black mutt named Jasper. Jasper became Paul's companion through school years, listening to his worries about friendships, crushes, and looming exams. By the time Paul was in his late teens, he had become a de facto volunteer at that shelter, helping feed litters of puppies and sociable kittens. He learned to recognize each dog's bark, each cat's unique purr, as though they spoke a private language only he could interpret. Those early experiences shaped Paul's worldview. He believed that every creature, human or animal, deserved kindness and a chance. It wasn't long before he founded Heartland Haven, a small but ambitious pet care and rescue center on the outskirts of London. The property was a cheerful yellow bungalow set amid emerald lawns. Inside, bright murals depicted dogs chasing butterflies and kittens chasing yarn. Children from nearby schools would visit on field trips, learning about animal care and empathy. Paul hired local teenagers for summer jobs, training them in animal first aid and shelter management. His wife, Laura, an art teacher, painted watercolor portraits of adoptable pets, which hung in the reception area. Their children, Emma and Sam, grew up under those murals, tumbling through grass with rescued pups. Life felt like a symphony of wholehearted devotion, one thriving crescendo after another. But in the winter of Paul's 35th year, dark clouds gathered. A corporate pet franchise opened a megacenter across town. It boasted grooming services, daycare packages, even a cafe where owners sipped lattes while dogs played in a climate-controlled play area. The new center's slick marketing ate into Heartland Haven's clientele. Paul cut prices, offered bundle deals, and held weekend adoption festivals. The community responded at first, but within weeks the franchise's glossy brochures covering every household began to shift loyalties. Revenue fell, debts mounted, and suppliers demanded payment. To keep afloat, Paul mortgaged his home. He borrowed from friends. He sold his beloved restoration-grade van, once painted bright green with daisies, to cover veterinary bills. Laura, who sensed their dreams slipping away, increased her teaching load and sold some of her paintings. But the strain seeped into their marriage, hushed arguments in the kitchen, icy silences around the breakfast table, tears before bedtime. Emma stopped joining her father on adoption days. Sam grew quiet, watching adults with wary eyes. One bitter afternoon, when a supplier showed up at the gate with a tow truck, Paul realized the end had come. When Heartland Haven closed its doors, Paul felt his identity collapse. He and Laura tried to salvage what remained, a final adoption event, selling off cages and bedding, but the losses were irreversible. One morning, as dawn's light washed the bungalow in pale silver, Paul packed his tools and clipped a farewell note on the front door. "Thank you for all the love and kindness. May every paw find a home." He folded the note carefully, the paper creased with emotion, and walked away. Laura held him for a long moment, eyes shining with unshed tears. Their children clung to her skirts. Paul whispered an apology he barely felt. He slipped away before anyone could stop him. Homelessness was a plunge into an alien world. Paul discovered the brutal calculus of street life: scarce food, ruthless competition for safe sleep spots, the constant ache of damp bones. He stood in line at soup kitchens, offered to sweep cafe floors for scraps. He applied for day labor jobs, carrying brick pallets and unloading trucks. Doors slammed. Voices snarled. Fellow rough sleepers eyed his politeness as weakness. Yet Paul persisted. He responded to every act of kindness, no matter how small, with gratitude, believing that respect opened unseen doors. One night, sleeping under a railway arch, Paul heard a faint whimper. He awoke, half dreaming a nightmare of his lost family. The whimper came again. Beneath him lay a curled-up dog, a stray so gaunt its ribs cast sharp silhouettes. Paul gently nudged the dog aside to sit up. In the lamplit gloom, he offered half of his crusty bread. The dog sniffed, hesitant, then devoured the bread in quiet gulps. Paul sighed and scratched behind its ear. "You hungry, mate?" The dog's eyes glistened like liquid onyx. In that moment, Paul felt a flicker of hope. He named the dog Buddy. Over the next days, Buddy shadowed Paul faithfully. Wherever Paul went, food line, dumpster behind the fishmonger, bench by the Thames, Buddy stayed by his side. Passersby occasionally tossed coins or a scrap of sausage from a nearby butcher's window. Paul split his share with Buddy. That first bond, man and dog united in hunger, rekindled Paul's compassion. Buddy was no longer just a stray, he was Paul's companion, his confidant. In exchange for scraps, the dog offered warmth, loyalty, and a reason to face each morning. Soon, Buddy's presence drew others. A brindle-colored pit bull mix lingered by the park gate, a limping greyhound trotted silently behind when Paul passed, a jittery terrier puppy peeked from under a parked car. Each canine, drawn by the scent of gentle hands and shared meals, joined Paul's ragtag assembly. By month's end, he tended to a pack of 15 strays. He collected abandoned blankets and plastic crates to fashion makeshift beds. He pulled coins from passersby to buy bags of dog food. On cold nights, he arranged the dogs in a circle, their bodies creating a windbreak, and lay at the center, feeling their steady breathing soothe his own. Word spread about the beggar who treated dogs like royalty. In local cafes, baristas exchanged gossip. At bus stops, commuters peeked over newspapers. Some laughed, others snapped photos. Many offered help: blankets, collars, leashes. A kind-hearted baker handed out leftover bread rolls. A pet store manager donated gently used beds and crates. Through these acts, Paul glimpsed the power of collective kindness. The same people who once walked past him without acknowledgement now lent their hands, their resources, their compassion. One chilly November morning, Sophie Marlowe arrived with a camera crew. Sophie was a lifestyle influencer known for uplifting human interest stories. She had heard rumors of the man and his dogs and felt compelled to witness it firsthand. When she approached Paul's corner, Buddy ran out to greet her, tail wagging like a metronome. Paul smiled politely but warily. Sophie crouched to Buddy's level, gently scratching behind his ear. "Hi there, beautiful boy. Who's your friend?" She panned her camera to capture Paul's quiet dignity amid his pack. "Mind if we record your story?" Over the next hour, Sophie recorded Paul's memories, his early years with Heartland Haven, the collapse of his business, the heartbreak of losing his family's trust, and that first brush with a cold snout at dawn. She filmed Bebop, the brindle pit bull who always stood guard, and Starlight, a Samoyed whose thick fur reminded Paul of his daughter's childhood teddy bear. She asked Paul about name origins, feeding routines, and the small rituals they observed. These moments, Paul said softly, remind me that no one, and no creature, is beyond redemption. When Sophie posted the video that evening, it went viral within hours. Millions viewed the footage of Paul and his pack. Comments ranged from tears and emojis to donations direct to a crowdfunding page Sophie established. Offers arrived from rescue organizations, veterinarians, and animal lovers worldwide. Paul, overwhelmed, watched the screen flicker with goodwill. He seldom asked for help, yet here it was, poured generously from strangers who saw hope in his herd of strays. With funds securely raised, Paul took the first step toward rebuilding his life. He found a small townhouse near Regent's Park, 2 bedrooms, a modest yard, and peeling paint he planned to refurbish himself. He rented it under his own name, bolstered by the donations that covered months of rent in advance. On a drizzly morning, Sophie organized a volunteer move-in. Dozens of helpers arrived with boxes, crates, and wagons. They carried the dogs gently inside, setting up crates and beds. Each dog sniffed new corners, wagged tails tentatively, then settled into the warmth of their own space. The townhouse became the headquarters for Second Chances Shelter, a nonprofit Paul established to rescue and rehabilitate strays. He hired 2 former rough sleepers, Jack, a lanky ex-carpenter with kind eyes, and Maria, a soft-spoken woman who once lived on a bench near Waterloo Station. Both shared Paul's devotion and knew what it meant to be without a home. Together, they built runs in the backyard from salvaged lumber and mesh panels. They set up a donated washing machine to launder beds. A veterinarian from Shoreditch volunteered weekly for checkups. A pet nutritionist drafted meal plans to ensure each dog reached ideal weight. Inside the shelter, afternoon light filtered through tall windows onto hardwood floors. Donated rugs softened the echo of paws. Walls that once wore peeling wallpaper were now painted in pastel hues, mint green for serenity, sunflower yellow for optimism, soft lavender for calm. Each room held photographs of dogs, past and present, smiling on adoption day. In the reception area, children attending school visits traced names under each portrait: Buddy, Hector, Luna, Daisy, Jasper, tribute to those who had changed Paul's life. It wasn't always smooth sailing. Managing a shelter brought new challenges: unexpected veterinary emergencies, bureaucratic red tape, complaints from neighbors about barking. One evening during a fierce thunderstorm, the power went out. The dogs, frightened, howled as rain splattered through a cracked window. Paul and Jack improvised lanterns from flashlights, calming each dog with soft voices. Maria shuttled water and towels. The storm lasted hours, but not a single dog escaped or panicked beyond help. When dawn broke, volunteers arrived to clear fallen branches and mend the window. Paul stood on the porch, raincoat dripping, and looked at the rebuilt fence. He felt pride not in the restored barrier, but in the community that rose to protect these creatures. In time, Second Chances evolved beyond rescue. Paul launched training workshops for new pet owners, teaching responsible care and the emotional needs of animals. He collaborated with local schools on empathy programs, using therapy dogs to connect with children facing trauma. He hosted Senior Paws events, encouraging seniors in care homes to adopt or foster older dogs. Each program deepened the shelter's roots in the neighborhood. Donations stabilized. Adoption rates soared. And always, at the center of it all, was Paul Turner, the man who befriended a stray at dawn and whose kindness changed the world. On the 3rd anniversary of Sophie's viral video, a documentary crew returned to capture the shelter's transformation. They filmed Paul greeting the dogs at sunrise, his silhouette framed by golden light. They recorded an adoption day, when 35 dogs found new homes. They interviewed volunteers who spoke of how helping at Second Chances gave them purpose. Even Emma and Sam, now teenagers, came to support their father, walking dogs on leashes and helping children pick the right companion. When Sophie pressed record for the final shot, she asked Paul a simple question: What's the biggest lesson you've learned? Paul paused, gazing at the play of sunlight on wagging tails. That love multiplies when you give it away, he said. A single act of kindness can bloom into something no one expects. I lost everything once. But the day a dog shared my bread, I found more than I'd ever dreamed. Years later, the shelter stands as a living testament to resilience and compassion. Former strays roam safe, healthy, and joyful. Volunteers, once pessimistic city dwellers, now carry hope in their pockets. Pet owners, inspired by Paul's example, fostered a culture of responsible care across London. A scholarship fund in Paul's name supports young people entering veterinary schools. And on a quiet corner of Greymont Street, a bronze plaque bears his likeness and a simple inscription, "Here, a man shared his heart, and changed countless lives." Each dawn, Paul still rises before sunrise. He steps outside the townhouse, greeting birds that nest in the eaves. He fills bowls for the early risers among the dogs, listening to gentle licks and soft whimpers. In the hush before the city roars awake, he remembers the boy with Daisy, the heartbreak in the yellow bungalow, and the crackling tear of that first sandwich given to a starving dog. He breathes in deeply, grateful for every twist of fate that led him here. For Paul Turner, a corner on a once-forgotten street became the birthplace of hope. A simple act of sharing bread, and of seeing worth in things others overlooked, proved more powerful than any corporate franchise, any corporate promise. It proved that sometimes, the smallest gestures can ripple outward, crafting a world in which every life, human or animal, deserves love, dignity, and a second chance. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories.